The morning sun crept over the rooftops of East Willow Street, casting soft golden light across the cracked sidewalks and faded brick houses. The neighborhood was waking up, dogs barking behind fences, buses roaring past, and the distant sound of children laughing. But for little Amara Lewis, 7 years old, that laughter didn't sound safe anymore. It sounded like something she didn't belong to. Amara clutched the straps of a faded pink backpack as she stepped out of the small house she shared with her mother, Tanya Lewis, a nurse who worked double shifts. Tanya had one hand on her keys, the other smoothing Amara's braids. "You be careful, baby, and remember, head straight to school, okay?" Amara nodded, but there was a tremor in her little voice. "Mom, will they be there again?" Tanya froze. She didn't need to ask who they were. For the past 2 weeks, a group of older kids from the next block had been waiting near the corner of Jefferson Avenue. Every time Amara walked by, they called her names. Monkey, trash, why are you so dark? Words that cut deeper than she could ever explain. Tanya had gone to the school and talked to the principal and even the parents. But nothing changed. They were just kids, everyone said. Just teasing. But Tanya knew better. Racism doesn't always wear a uniform or hold a sign. Sometimes it hides behind childish laughter. Amara tried to be brave. But that morning, she couldn't shake the memory of yesterday. Her book scattered on the ground. Her knees scraped, her tears swallowed because she didn't want her mom to see her cry again. As she stood at the end of the driveway, her eyes fell on the group of men across the street. Bikers, 6 of them, wearing black leather jackets and heavy boots. Their motorcycles gleamed like metal beasts in the sunlight. The sound of their engines rumbled low and deep, like thunder waiting to strike. Most people in the neighborhood avoided them. The patches on their jackets read Iron Brotherhood Riders. They looked intimidating. Tattoos, scars, long beards, and the kind of silence that spoke louder than words. But that morning, as Amara clutched her backpack and looked toward the corner where the bullies waited, she felt something different. She didn't feel fear. She felt a strange kind of hope. She crossed the street slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. One of the bikers noticed her, a tall, broad man with silver hair braided down his back. His name was Reggie Bear Coleman, the leader of the Iron Brotherhood. He turned off his engine and removed his helmet, his dark eyes softening as he saw the little girl standing before him. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked in a deep, gravelly voice. Amara hesitated, her tiny fingers twisting the strap of her backpack. Mister, can you walk me to school?" The other bikers looked at each other, their tough expressions breaking into quiet surprise. Bear leaned down. "You want us to walk you to school?" Amara nodded, "So I can feel safe." For a long moment, the only sound was the idle hum of the motorcycles. Then Bear looked toward the others. Tank, a massive man with a scar over his eyebrow, Ace, the youngest with a warm grin, and Mama T, the only woman among them, her braids wrapped under a red bandana. Bear's jaw tightened. He'd seen a lot in his time: violence, poverty, injustice, but there was something about this little girl's voice that struck a chord deep in his chest. She wasn't just scared of bullies. She was scared of being unseen, unheard, and unprotected in a world that judged her before knowing her. "Where's your school, sweetheart?" he asked gently. 3 blocks down," she whispered. "Jefferson Elementary." Bear stood up, stretched his shoulders, and looked at his crew. "You heard the lady," he said. "Mount up." The rumble that followed made the ground tremble. The 6 bikers started their engines, forming a protective circle around Amara. Her little eyes widened, half in awe, half in disbelief. The sound was thunderous, but she didn't flinch. She felt powerful, like the noise was keeping her safe. The neighbors peeked out from their porches as the convoy rolled down the street. Amara walked in the middle, her tiny steps steady between the towering bikes. The same kids who had tormented her stood frozen at the corner of Jefferson Avenue. Their laughter died in their throats as the bikers approached. Bear cut the engine and looked straight at the group. His voice was low and steady. "Is there a problem here?" The biggest boy stammered. "And no, sir. We were just waiting for the bus." Bear's eyes narrowed. "Good. Then wait quietly." No one dared move. Amara kept walking, the bikers surrounding her like a living wall. When they reached the school gates, she looked up at Bear and smiled, a real smile, one that hadn't appeared in weeks. "Thank you, mister," she said softly. Can you walk me again tomorrow?" Bear's expression softened. "You bet we will." That night, Bear sat in the clubhouse with the rest of the Iron Brotherhood. The room was filled with the smell of oil and old leather and the sound of a radio playing blues softly in the background. He couldn't stop thinking about that little girl's eyes, the fear, the strength, and the courage it took for her to ask strangers for help. He looked around the table. "Tomorrow morning, we ride again," he said. Tank chuckled. "What's the mission, boss?" Bear smiled faintly. "We walk a little girl to school." The room went quiet. Then Mama T leaned forward, her eyes glistening. "You think the world's gonna notice?" Bear nodded slowly. "They will. Maybe not today, but they will." The next morning, the sun rose to the sound of engines again. Only this time, there weren't 6 bikers. There were 20. Word had spread through the local biker community overnight. Men and women from nearby chapters joined in. Some had never met Amara, but every one of them understood what it meant to protect a child's innocence. As Amara stepped out of her house, her mouth dropped open. The entire street was lined with bikes, chrome glinting in the morning light. Dozens of riders stood waiting, helmets under their arms, smiles on their faces. Her mother, Tanya, froze on the porch, overwhelmed. What is this?" Bear took off his helmet, grinning. "A promise. Your daughter's walking safe from now on." Tanya's eyes welled up. "You didn't have to." Bear interrupted softly. "Yes, we did." The engines roared to life again, louder and prouder than before. The whole neighborhood came out to watch. Amara walked proudly in the center, holding Mama T's hand. Her steps were light now, her eyes shining. The same bullies who once mocked her were nowhere to be seen. And for the first time in a long time, the little black girl who once trembled with fear walked to school like she was royalty, escorted by a family she never knew she had. As Bear watched her disappear through the school gates, he whispered to himself, "Ain't no one messing with that girl again." What he didn't know was that their simple act of kindness was about to shake not just the neighborhood, but the entire country. The morning after the Iron Brotherhood's second escort, the neighborhood still buzzed with talk. Everyone had seen it, a line of roaring motorcycles, the engines echoing like thunder, surrounding a tiny black girl with a pink backpack. But what no one expected was that the moment would spread beyond East Willow Street. When Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly neighbor with a big heart and an even bigger phone camera, uploaded the video to Facebook, she just wanted her friends to see something beautiful. "Sometimes," she captioned, "angels were let instead of wings." Within hours, that short clip of Amara walking between the bikers exploded across social media. On TikTok, it hit 1 million views before noon. Twitter flooded with hashtags. #RideForAmara, #BikersForJustice, #ProtectBlackChildren. The comments came pouring in, from parents, teachers, activists, and bikers from every corner of the country. This brought tears to my eyes. I wish every kid felt that safe walking to school. This is what real community looks like. But not everyone saw it that way. By afternoon, local news stations were already airing the story. A polished anchor in a blue suit introduced it like a mystery. In a quiet neighborhood outside Atlanta, a group of bikers have taken on an unexpected mission, walking a little girl to school. Some are calling them heroes. Others say it's intimidation. At that same moment, Bear sat in the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse, watching the story unfold on the flickering TV screen. Amara's smile filled the frame, her small hand clutching Mama T's as motorcycles flanked her sides. The sight made his chest swell with pride. But when the reporter mentioned possible overreaction and concerns about aggressive presence, his face darkened. Tank slammed his hand on the table. "They call that intimidation? We're protecting a kid, not starting trouble." Mama T shook her head. "People fear what they don't understand. They see black and leather, and they think violence." Bear leaned forward, his voice steady but hard. "Then we'll show them what family really looks like." He picked up his phone and called Tanya. He said, "Things are blowing up online. Are you okay with all this attention?" Tanya sighed on the other end. "It's been a lot. Reporters outside the house, phones ringing nonstop. But Amara, she's happier than I've ever seen her. She feels safe and proud. Bay's lips curved into a faint smile. Then we did right. That evening, Tanya opened her front door to find Amara sitting on the porch steps, doodling in her notebook. The sun dipped low, painting the street orange and gold. "What you drawing, baby?" Tanya asked softly. Amara beamed. "My new family." Tanya leaned closer and saw the picture, stick figures of motorcycles, people in jackets, and a small brown girl holding hands with a woman labeled Mama T. The image made Tanya's throat tighten. "They are not your family, sweetie," she said gently, "but they do care about you." Amara smiled. "That's what family means, right?" Before Tanya could respond, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Mrs. Lewis? This is Good Morning America. We'd love to feature your daughter's story." Tanya blinked. "You're kidding." But they weren't. By the next morning, national reporters had arrived. Cameras lined the sidewalks. When Amara and the bikers showed up for their usual ride, the crowd of journalists erupted with flashes and microphones. Bear wasn't used to attention. The man had spent half his life staying out of the spotlight. But when one reporter shoved a MIC toward him and asked, "So, why are you doing this?" he looked straight into the camera and said simply, "Because no child should feel unsafe for the color of their skin." That clip hit harder than he expected. Across the country, people shared it with captions like "Real men protect," and "This is what love looks like." Within 48 hours, biker clubs from Chicago to Los Angeles started organizing their own Ride for Safety days, escorting kids to school in underprivileged areas, volunteering for anti-bullying programs, and holding peace rallies. The movement was spreading, but with every wave of love came a ripple of resistance. One afternoon, while Bear and the crew were parked outside the school waiting for Amara's dismissal, a police cruiser rolled up. 2 officers stepped out, one younger, one older, both wearing mirrored sunglasses and tight expressions. "Hey," the older one barked, "you guys can't block the sidewalk." Bear raised his hands calmly. "We're not blocking it, just waiting for a student." "Yeah," the officer smirked. "You mean that video kid?" Mama T stepped forward. "Her name's Amara." The officer sneered. "Well, Amara's got the whole internet riled up. Some folks think this is a stunt. You got permits for this." Tank gritted his teeth. "We don't need a permit to walk a child home safe." "Actually," the younger officer muttered, "you kind of do when it causes a public disturbance." Bear's jaw flexed. He could feel the tension building behind him, his crew ready to defend, his instincts telling him to stay calm. "Listen, officer," Bear said slowly, "we aren't here to cause trouble. Just doing right by a little girl." The older cop stepped closer, his tone sharp. "Yeah, well, maybe that girl needs to learn that life isn't fair. You can't protect her forever." The silence that followed was razor-sharp. Mama T's hands clenched into fists. Tank shifted his stance. But before anyone could speak, a small voice broke the tension. "Bay!" Amara had walked out of the school gate, her backpack bouncing. She froze when she saw the officers, her smile fading. Bear's entire posture softened. "It's all right, sweetheart. We're just talking, duh." The younger officer glanced at her, and something in his eyes flickered. Maybe guilt, maybe realization. "Hey, kid," he said awkwardly, "are you heading home?" Amara nodded quietly. "Yes, sir." The older cop sighed, muttering under his breath, "This is ridiculous." Then he turned to Bear. "Wrap it up, old man. Don't make this a problem." As the officers walked away, Bear's fist tightened. Not from fear, from fury. Fury at how easily kindness could be twisted, how quickly protection could be seen as a threat just because of who was offering it. Later that night, he sat on the clubhouse porch alone. The neon sign buzzed faintly overhead. Mama T joined him, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You good?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, just thinking about what he said. You can't protect her forever." Mama T took a sip, her eyes thoughtful. "Maybe not, but you can show her she's worth protecting. That's what matters." Bear looked at her, then at the stars scattered above. Do you ever think about how broken this world is? Mama T smiled faintly. Every day. But then a little girl asked us to walk her to school, and for a moment, it doesn't feel so broken. For a while, they just sat there in silence. The sound of the night filled the air, crickets, wind, and the faint hum of a passing truck. Then Bay's phone buzzed. A text from Tanya. Thank you for everything. She sleeps without nightmares now. Bay stared at the message for a long moment. A quiet smile touched his lips. That's all the thanks I need, he murmured. But as he looked out toward the dark road stretching beyond the clubhouse, a shadow passed over his face. Because deep down, he knew stories like Amara's didn't always end peacefully. And when the world saw a viral act of love, someone, somewhere, always tried to break it. And that storm, the one no one saw coming, was already on its way. The morning of the storm began quietly. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds that felt too close to the earth. Tanya woke up early, as she always did, but there was something different in the air, something thick and uneasy. The news channels were already buzzing again. Overnight, a popular news host had aired a segment questioning whether the biker escorts were encouraging chaos. A few radio pundits had thrown around words like reckless, dangerous, and even gang-affiliated. Tanya turned off the TV before Amara could hear it. But when she peeked through the blinds, she saw 2 police cruisers parked near the street corner, watching. She sighed. They won't let this be about kindness, she whispered. When Bay and the Iron Brotherhood arrived that morning, the tension was unmistakable. Even before the engine shut off, they could feel the eyes, neighbors, cameras, cops. Mama T swung off a bike and fixed a bandana. Feels different today, she muttered. Bay nodded. Let's keep it clean. No noise. No attitude. Just love. As Amara ran out the door, her little backpack bouncing, the bikers smiled and waved. She giggled, with the same sparkle of joy in her eyes as the first day they met. But even she could feel something was wrong. Bay, she asked quietly, why are those police here again? Bay knelt down beside her, his voice steady. They're just watching, baby girl. Sometimes people watch when they don't understand. Amara looked up at him. Do we still walk? Bay smiled gently. We always walk. So they did, down the same street, step by step, Bear leading the line, Mamati and Tank behind, the engines idling low and steady. Amara walked in the middle, clutching her backpack straps tightly. But as they reached the halfway point to school, red and blue lights flashed behind them. A police SUV blocked the road. The sirens blared once, sharp and commanding. Pull over. Stop right there. The bikers froze. Bear raised his hand, motioning for the group to stay calm. A tall, broad-shouldered officer stepped out, the same one from before. His hand rested on his belt, close to his holster. What did I tell you people? The officer barked. You were warned about this. Bear kept his voice even. We're just walking her to school. You're causing a disturbance. Intimidating people. Mamati folded her arms. Intimidation is when men like you scare little girls. The officer's jaw clenched. Step back. Tank muttered under his breath. Here we go again. Amara hid behind Bay's leg, her small fingers gripping his jeans. Her heart raced. Then, out of nowhere, a crowd began forming at the end of the street. Parents, neighbors, even a few reporters. They'd heard the commotion. Some started recording on their phones. Bear knew the situation could spiral. He took a deep breath and slowly reached for his wallet. Officer, I'm not armed. I'm not resisting. But you should know who we are before you make this worse. The officer frowned. I know who you are. Bikers playing heroes. Bear handed over a worn military ID card. Read it. The man looked down, confusion flickering across his face. It read, Master Sergeant Thomas Bear Brooks, U.S. Army, retired, 82nd Airborne Division. Then Bear pointed to the patch on his vest, a faded black emblem with wings and a dagger. That's not a gang symbol. That's my unit. I serve this country so little girls like her could walk free. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that makes even the wind pause. The officer's tone softened, almost uncertain. That doesn't change the law. No, Bear replied, but it should change your heart. Just then, Mama T's phone buzzed, a message from Tanya. She showed it to Bear. It was a link. Breaking news. Ride for Amara movement expands nationwide. Thousands of bikers joined to walk kids to school. They weren't alone anymore. Across the country, the movement had caught fire. Videos poured in from Chicago, Houston, and Detroit. Lines of bikers, black and white, riding through neighborhoods escorting children to school. Parents cheered, teachers waved, and kids laughed. One reporter's voice echoed from a car radio nearby. What started as one little girl's plea for safety has turned into a symbol of unity. The Ride for Amara movement is now spreading hope across America. The officer stepped back, unsure of what to do next. Cameras clicked all around. The crowd had grown larger, more vocal. People were chanting, "Let them walk! Let them walk!" Bear looked down at Amara and smiled softly. "Are you ready, princess?" Amara nodded, her eyes bright with courage. "Let's walk." And they did, right past a police SUV, the crowd parting for them like a river. The bikers surrounded her again, their steps slow and strong, the engines rumbling low behind. It was a march, not of anger, but of power. A power that came from calm, from love, from purpose. As they reached the school gates, Amara turned around. The whole block was silent. Even the officers watched, frozen in the moment. She lifted her hand, small, steady, and waved. "Thank you for keeping me safe," she said, her voice clear and innocent. That single gesture broke something in the air. The older officer looked away. The younger one, standing beside him, gave a small nod of respect. Bear placed his hand over his heart, then turned back to the crew. "Let's roll home." That night, the story hit every news channel in America. 7-year-old black girl leads nationwide movement for safety and unity. Bikers ride to protect, not intimidate. The story that changed the town. Interviews followed. Tanya spoke through tears about the kindness she never expected. Mama T appeared on a morning show, saying, "You don't fight fear with anger. You fight it with love, loud love." Even the officer, the same one who had blocked their path, later gave a statement. "Maybe we judged too fast," he admitted. "Those bikers did more for that kid than any of us did." As for Amara, she became a symbol far bigger than she ever understood. Her simple wish, "I just want to feel safe," had turned into a movement that reminded people what community really means. Months later, Bear and the Iron Brotherhood stood once again at that same corner. But this time, there was no fear. The city had painted a mural on the school wall, a little black girl with braids walking between two bikers. Underneath, in bold letters, were the words, "Bravery begins small." Bear stared at the mural for a long time. "She changed everything," he said softly. Mama T nodded. "No, brother. She reminded the world that we could." Amara ran up to them, now wearing a bright smile and holding 2 small badges she'd made herself. She handed one to Bear and one to Mama T. "I made these," she said proudly, "for my guardians." Bear chuckled, wiping the corner of his eye. "You didn't have to do that, sweetheart." "I know," Amara replied, "but family deserves thank yous." He looked at her, this little girl who had faced fear with innocence and changed hearts with a smile. "You're something special, Amara." She grinned. "Mama says I get that from her." The bikers laughed, the sound echoing through the air like thunder rolling after a storm. As they rode off together that afternoon, the sun breaking through the clouds, the engines humming low, the air filled with light, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a story about a scared little girl and the bikers who protected her. It was a story about how love in action, no matter how loud or unlikely, could turn fear into freedom, strangers into family, and one small voice into a roar the whole world could hear.